Zooey Mama! I'm here today to talk about Marvel Boy and whether I think he's going to be worth buying with your precious resources or if he might be a bit of a bust. So, throughout this video, I'm going to talk about his best synergies, the pros, the cons. I'll give you 3 deck ideas that you can play right when Marvel Boy comes out, and then I'll just give my final ratings and reviews. So Marvel Boy is coming to Spotlights this very first week of this new August season for Young Avengers. August 6th will be in Spotlights alongside Blob and Red Hulk, 2 big boys that have seen some big nerfs very recently. Marvel Boy himself is a 3-cost, 2-powered card with the ability after each turn, give 3 of your 1-cost cards plus 1 power. And important to note, this is not an on reveal, it's not an ongoing, okay? It works similar to Thena or Elsa. He's just adding power at the end of every turn. He can't be turned off by Rogue. He can really only be turned off by Red Guardian, okay, if he is an eligible target when you play him. Other than that, he's just adding power to cards, okay, at the end of the turn, including the turn you play him on turn 3. If you do play him right on turn 3, he will add power to 1-cost cards that turn. So it's very possible that at the end of turn 3, he's already an effective 3/5, okay? Now let's dive into some of his best synergies. So first up, we have cards like Squirrel Girl, okay? Now he's only giving each 1-cost card a max of +1 each turn. So you really do want to work for having 3 targets for Marvel Boy to hit. If you only have 2 targets, he's only giving a total of +2 each turn. If you have 3, he's giving that max +3 spread across those targets. So cards like Squirrel Girl, where it's just adding 3 1-cost cards to the board, is kind of a no-brainer. Okay, you could also do Shanna, although Shanna also costs 3, so you have to figure out which one you play first. Debris can work. Even something like Thanos is good, just to guarantee you have multiple 1-cost cards that you can get on the board before or right around when you play Marvel Boy, okay? But preferably before you even get Marvel Boy on the board. Then we've got Kyra. Listen, we know that 1-costs are vulnerable. When we talk about the counters, of course we're going to mention Killmonger. Kyra can help us there. If Kyra is protecting all of our 1-cost cards, the only way to get through that would be to turn off Kyra's ongoing and then play Killmonger, and that's just a really big ask. I mean, if you have Kyra down, you're pretty much in the safe zone by that point. And then something interesting that I'm very excited to try out is Magic. Listen, Marvel Boy is kind of like these high Evo cards like Evolved Cyclops, where at the end of the turn, it just gets a little bit extra value when it triggers. So if you extend the game by 1 additional turn, you're giving Marvel Boy 1 additional trigger. That's 3 extra power, okay? So I really like the idea of just taking a Marvel Boy decks into the long game, going to that turn 7, getting that extra value. Now some locations that are going to be very nice, obviously any location that gives you 1-cost cards, okay? That can be squirrels, that can be the little dinosaurs, the ninjas, right? These locations are just going to be free for Marvel Boy to power up. Even rocks on your board aren't that bad. Rocks are 1-cost cards, okay? Your opponent maybe shovels rocks into your deck, and you can use those rocks against them. And then something like Kiln, or if someone plays Storm and a location gets flooded, you know, if you've got a 1-cost card sitting there, or maybe 2 or even 3, Marvel Boy can power those up, okay? So he's going to be actually good to add power to locations that you can no longer play in. Now, when we look at the cards that could potentially counter Marvel Boy, I think it shows how good he's going to be, because he has a bit of a counter to all of his counters. Okay, first up is Red Guardian. I mentioned that yes, Red Guardian could turn Marvel Boy off, whereas something like Rogue or Enchantress aren't going to do anything because Marvel Boy isn't ongoing. But Marvel Boy is powering up 1-cost cards. So 1-cost cards generally start off at 1 or 2 power. Well, you just make sure to play Marvel Boy on a location where you have one of those 1-cost cards with low power. If you play Marvel Boy on top of a squirrel, it's going to be hard to target him with Red Guardian. Okay, you wouldn't be able to hit him until like turn 5, guaranteed. Turn 4 would be really the earliest, and that's a 50-50 if Marvel Boy powered up a squirrel to have 2 power. Red Guardian's only picking one of those. So even though Red Guardian could turn Marvel Boy off, you're often, if you play him well, going to be able to play around the Red Guardian. Then we've got Shadow King. So Marvel Boy is powering up these 1-cost cards. Shadow King can reset that power. But you just got to make sure to go wide with it, okay? And that's why Squirrel Girl is really good, because each squirrel and Squirrel Girl herself all go to different locations. Don't put all of your 1-cost cards on the same lane where your opponent can just play Shadow King and erase all that game power. If you spread it out, if you've got 1-cost cards spread across all 3 lanes, Shadow King is realistically only hitting one of those. And so you're not losing everything. Even if your opponent does play Shadow King and take off some power buffs, it's not taking off everything that Marvel Boy gave. It's only taking off a portion of it, okay? So again, you can play around it. And then we've got Killmonger, as I mentioned on the last slide. You can just play Kaera. That's the simplest, easiest way. You can also slap down an armor if you're just protecting cards in one lane, which can be kind of like a Shadow King where you're, losing a bit, but you're protecting some of the value. But again, if you have Kaera, your opponent really can't do much with Killmonger, okay? You don't see decks out there running Rogue and Killmonger. It's just not a thing. And so even his counters have ways to be played around. So let's go into some more specifics for the good and the bad of Marvel Boy. First up with the good. He has an insane power ceiling. Okay, if it's a 6-turn game and you get Marvel Boy down on turn 3 when you already had 3 1-costs on the board, again, just play Squirrel Girl turn 1, he will be a 3-14 effectively by turn 6. Okay, if he did manage to extend the game to turn 7, then he's effectively a 3-17. That's bigger than Blob, who's in Spotlights with, okay? Bigger than Red Hulk sometimes, who's in Spotlights with. I mean, that's crazy. That's an insane power ceiling. Even if it's just a 6-turn game, 3-14, that's Sage level, but it's 3-14 spread out across 3 different lanes, okay? Sage at 14 power dies to Shang-Chi, gets taken all the way down by Shadow King. Marvel Boy doesn't, because that power is spread across the board. If you play Marvel Boy late, he's still 3-5. Again, he works on the turn that he is played, okay? Because at the end of each turn when he's checking. So if you didn't draw him until turn 6, so you didn't have a chance to play him, you slap him down right on the last turn, he powers up the 1-cost, and you're going to be playing him with a good amount of 1-cost. He's still a 3-5. That's not bad. That's not a bad floor at all. Again, he's very hard to counter because he's not an ongoing. You can play around Red Guardian. He goes too wide for Shadow King, and you can even play around Killmonger if you put in some other cards like Armor and or Kaera. And then if you do just get turn 1 Squirrel Girl into turn 3 Marvel Boy, which is the easiest way to get him powering up right away, by turn 6, that combo is effectively 4 cost, 18 power. When you combine the base stats of Marvel Boy and Squirrel Girl and all of the extra power that Marvel Boy is adding, okay? That's 4 cost, 18 power spread across 3 lanes. That's a game winner. I mean, Marvel Boy is literally a game-winning condition, okay? He's a win condition card that only costs 3. Cards like that are very, very good. If you have a 3-cost card that can win you the game, that's very nice, okay? That's extremely strong. I'm loving the ceiling. In terms of the bad, well, you do want to play him as soon as possible. While he's not the worst on the last turn, it does mean every turn that you miss playing him, you're essentially like losing 3 power, okay, or up to 3 power. And so if you've got multiple 3-cost cards that you all want to play right on turn 3, that can kind of conflict with each other. 1-costs are, of course, very vulnerable. Even if you are playing Kaera, maybe you don't draw her. Again, there's really not too much Killmonger around, but it's worth noting that you are powering up the most vulnerable cost cards. Okay, but they're also the easiest to flood the board with. But that does take up board space. If you're playing Squirrel Girl, that's 3 board spaces from 1 card. If you have some locations that are hard to play in, or you get like Space Throne location or something that's just really tough or blocked off, like your board is going to fill up really, really quickly, okay? It's like when you're playing just a standard Zoo or Patriot deck and you've got a restrictive location, it just feels like it gets full so fast. Now you have to like skip turns just because you don't want to fill everything up before turn 6. You do have to play around Red Guardian. Red Guardian is very popular, okay? Much more common than Killmonger right now, and I would be strategic when placing Marvel Boy. Put him on the same location as a low-powered 1-cost card to give your opponent at least the 50-50, okay, instead of just having a clear shot of Marvel Boy. And then I think he's really good, and because he's a win condition with such a high power ceiling, he does have the potential to get nerfed. Okay, it doesn't mean he's going to, it's not guaranteed. But if he turns out to be as good as I think he's going to be, he's in the danger zone, and he's actually pretty easy to nerf because he's all stats based. Okay, you lower his base power, or you have him only hit 2 1-cost cards, or you do something like that. You make him a 4-cost card, which means he can't get going until later. Okay, there are some very simple, fast ways to nerf him if needed, so that is a bit dangerous. I am a bit worried about that. This is my friendly reminder to give this video a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because we talk about every single new card that comes to Marvel Snap, in addition to talking about the spotlights and planning out your resources and which Series 4 and Series 5 cards you should be chasing after. Now to talk about Marvel Boy's floor and his ceiling. Well, in terms of his floor, on turn 6, is basically if it is a 6-turn game, that's last turn, you play him then, if you didn't draw him till late, he's only given +3 power, okay? Now, yes, technically he could power up things, and, you know, there's just no targets, or all those 1-cost cards die to Killmonger, and then he's essentially a 3-2, okay? Like, his technical floor is a 3-2, but that's realistically never gonna happen, okay? Realistically, if you're playing Marvel Boy, you're playing 1-cost cards, okay? You will have targets for him. So even if you don't draw him until late, you're going to have targets on the board. Or even if your opponent has Killmonger, usually they're playing it early. You know, destroy deck, you're using it to kill your Deadpool, your X-23. Final turn, you're playing like Null and Deadpool and such. And so even if your opponent does Killmonger, maybe you had Marvel Boy down, but on turn 6, you're actually refilling your board with 1-cost cards, okay? But you're going to have those. If you're playing Marvel Boy right, his floor is going to be a 3-5. I mean, it just is. You're going to have targets, and at worst, you get him on the last turn of the game, and that's a 3-5. Okay, that's a good floor. Not only is that viable, it's honestly competitive because it's 3-5 spread across lanes still, right? You can play the 1-cost cards in different lanes to add power to multiple spots, even on the last turn of the game. This is a good floor. I talk about the floor of every single new card. Some of those cards absolutely suck, and we're going to see some of those later in the season because there's some cards with just horrible floors. Marvel Boy has a very nice floor. You know, this is a reasonable floor. It's respectable. In terms of his ceiling, which is absurd, we've got him coming down right on turn 3 with 3 targets already on the board, whether it's 3 separate 1-costs or just Squirrel Girl, and he's giving plus 12 power total in a 6-turn game, or plus 15 power total in a 7-turn game, right? Every extra turn is plus 3 power. Effectively, this is a 3-14 or a 3-17. That is nuts, again, and that's spread out, okay? That doesn't die to Shang-Chi. None of those cards are hitting 10 or more power themselves. I mean, that is just insane. Shadow King's only taking off a fraction of that. Okay, Killmonger can be prevented with protection. I mean, it's nuts. That is definitely overpowered. This is a crazy ceiling. These are cards that are scary. Okay, they're scary good, scary for the meta, scary for getting nerfed. In average, I think we can expect 2 things. Okay, either getting 3 1-costs down, and maybe you get Marvel Boy down on turn 4. You know, maybe turn 3 you had to play Shanna to get the cards on the board or something. Or, you know, you miss the Squirrel Girl, but you just get down other 1-cost cards. You know, maybe you get down like the Hood and then the demon that came from the Hood. Or you're playing Thanos and you got 2 Thanos stones down. And so maybe you just have 2 targets. Okay, I think that's reasonable. It's a nice middle ground where you're either getting Marvel Boy on turn 3 with 2 targets, or maybe you have 3 targets but on turn 4 or later. In this case, he's given plus 8 power. Well, that's still a 3-10. And again, that's a 3-10 that's spread out on the lanes that you choose. It's divided. It's not dying to Shang-Chi. It's not getting completely wiped out by Shadow King. I mean, that's nuts. I think on average, Marvel Boy might be in the overpowered range. Okay, and this is the biggest guesswork, is the average. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you think on average, he is going to be effectively a 3-10, or if you think he's going to be better, even closer to his ceiling on average, or if you think it's actually going to be hard to get down a bunch of targets for him, or to get him right on turn 3. Okay, let me know what you think of this average, but I have him sitting right around a 3-10, which sounds a bit OP. So to kick off the first of 3 decks that I've put together for Marvel Boy, first up, I have High Boy. Bit of an immature name for me. I'm talking about High Evo here, okay? we've got one cost already that High Evo loves. If you've ever played a good amount of High Evo, you know that Sunspot, Nebula, and Misty Knight are all fan favorites of this deck. So I've taken that package. I've also thrown in a Squirrel Girl again. She's just so nuts with Marvel Boy because she's 3 targets and it doesn't mess up his curve at all. And we've also got Kyara, and High Evo actually likes Kyara. That's been traditionally like Kyara's kind of best home for her, is High Evo, where you have these 1 cost to protect, and then we've also got She-Hulk and the Evolved Hulk that she can protect. So we're pretty protected here from Killmonger and Shang-Chi, and you can just float energy, and Marvel Boy's powering stuff up. Okay, and High Evo already likes floating energy. We've got magic in here to give Marvel Boy even more turns. High Evo also already likes magic. Okay, that's more time for Cyclops to trigger, more time for Sunspot, Misty Knight to trigger, just like it's more time for Marvel Boy to trigger. And then we've also got Cull Obsidian. He loves 1 cost cards, so he's going to be pretty easy to play as another just big power card. Next up, I've got a Thanos Lockjaw list. Listen, Thanos has seen his fair share of nerfs, okay? Nobody's denying that. But he's still got some decent potential. And with Lockjaw back in the mix with the pretty recent buff, you know, there's good opportunity there. And it's a home where you know you're going to have 1 cost cards because you've got these Infinity Stones. So now, not only are these stones discounting Mockingbird, not only do these stones have the ability to turn into something big when you play on Lockjaw, but these stones can now also just get powered up by Marvel Boy, okay? Or sometimes you play a card on Lockjaw and one of the stones comes out and you're kind of salty, you're like, oh man, I got that low powered card out. Well, that's not so bad anymore if Marvel Boy is actually adding a little bit of power to it. And then again, we have Kyara here to protect those stones, which are now more important because they do all buff up Thanos, essentially. And Kyara is protecting your Mockingbird, your Thanos, and your Scar. Lastly, I've got this Young Avengers Zoo deck, which I also showed in my video for Kate Bishop, because we've got her in here. Okay, the new Season Pass card, Kate Bishop. This deck is Zoo. We've got tons of 1 cost cards. It's going to fill up the board. That's giving targets for Marvel Boy. It's also just powering up Dazzler when the board inevitably gets full. We've got Shannon here to help out with that as well. And then just Kyara to protect everything. Kazar, Blue Marvel to power it all up. Gilgamesh sees all those cards being powered up, comes down as a huge power stat stick, and Mockingbird is coming down for cheap and big power as well. Now, to talk about this Spotlight Week specifically, we're in an interesting spot where we've known he's going to come out with Blob and Red Hulk. Both Blob and Red Hulk has seen a few nerfs recently, okay? But in terms of token value, all of these cards are Series 5. If you do not have these cards, especially if you don't own any of them, it's a great chance to pick it up, okay? It just is. We know metas change. We know Second Dinner likes to buff cards. They like to nerf cards. At the end of the day, if you have a chance to get 2 Series 5 cards existing plus the new Series 5 card, that's just a great time, okay? So great token value. Being competitive, it's honestly still good. Yes, Blob took a big nerf, okay? But Blob might still see some play in Arishem. That's really where he was seeing play before, really the only deck he's been seeing play recently. He might still see play there, okay, even though he's now set to just needing at least 13 power. It's still a decent home for him. Red Hulk hasn't seen too much play recently, mainly because of Arishem, because of Blob, but now he's kind of back to being just the big 6 cost card again. So yes, he's seen his fair share of nerfs. He first came out and he was the new OP 6 cost and people kind of abandoned Blob for Red Hulk. Then it reversed. Now maybe it's back to Red Hulk. The point is these cards are just big. They're just powerful. And depending on the meta, you know, times change, things change, but they just add value over time. Okay, some metas, they won't be too popular, but some they will be. In terms of the variants, I think they're good. The Marvel Boy one, that's a Flaviano, it's great, it's awesome. The Blob is kind of alright. I think it's fine, nothing crazy. But this Red Hulk one is insane. I love this one. Okay, he's just looking super jacked, super ripped, got all the fire coming off. I mean, this is just cool, okay? So I think it's fine, good levels of being competitive, and I think there's some nice variants. So to give my final ratings and predictions of Marvel Boy, in terms of being fun, I think he's okay. He's not just a simple stat stick, but he is just adding stats to the board, okay? He's a stat stick that gets value over time and spreads across locations. So it's not super boring, but it's not super exciting. In terms of being flexible, again, he's just okay. He's not stuck to one home. He's not only stuck to Thanos or only stuck to Zoo. But you do need to recognize that, kind of like a Call Obsidian almost, you need to be playing a deck where you have multiple one-cost cards. Preferably, you can get 3 on the board pretty consistently, okay? So, not the worst flexibility, but he's not going to be in every single deck. In terms of being competitive, I think he's amazing. Before the season started, when I did my first season preview, I thought Kate Bishop and Marvel Boy were both neck and neck about for being the best card of the season. Kate Bishop just seemed super flexible and like she was going to work perfectly in Loki decks. Well, Loki now is different. Okay, Loki's got changed. Loki might not be bad, but it's no longer getting a huge benefit from hand fill. And so after this Loki change, I have Marvel Boy up here now with Kate Bishop still here. I think Marvel Boy is the best card of the season. I think he's going to prove himself to just be the strongest, most competitive card of the season. That doesn't mean you won't have fun with other cards or see them as good. You know, Kate Bishop, I think, might see a bit more play, not only being the season pass card, but I think she's more flexible. She can find more homes. But I think Marvel Boy might make the biggest impact on the meta, and he might be too good. So my recommendation is to, you're probably going to want to get him, okay? Now, as always, new cards, we're predicting it. We don't know for sure. Wait for it to come out. Wait and see, especially if you're unsure of the Spotlight Week. Maybe you already have Blob and Red Hulk, and you're just going to be opening for Marvel Boy. You know, give it a couple days to wait and see. But I really think he's going to be strong. I'm actually worried he's going to be too strong. But I will say, Second Dinner recently has been doing pretty good at nerfing cards in a healthy way. At least they're new cards. Okay, Red Hulk is a great example. They released him. He was too strong. They took him down a tiny bit. Still too strong. Okay, took him down a tiny bit more. Right? If Marvel Boy does prove to be too strong, maybe they just make him a 3-1 or 3-0. Usually they just lower cards floor a little bit to start. And so I don't think he'll see a huge nerf if he does need to be nerfed. And that is an if. Again, we're going to have to wait and see. But I think he's good. I mean, the stats speak for themselves, okay? Like, it's not just guessing on paper. Like, you see the power. Like, the math, it just adds up so quickly. His power output, it's crazy, okay? And it starts happening right away, right on turn 3 when you play him. So those are my thoughts. I have Marvel Boy as the best, most competitive card of this Young Avengers season. Let me know what you think of Marvel Boy in the comments down below. If you agree with me and you think he's going to be really strong, or if you disagree, if you think he doesn't add enough power, or if the one costs are just too vulnerable, okay, let me know what you think of him, what you think his best combos and decks will be come August 6th when he hits Marvel Snap. And until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.